How are you guys doing today? I hope that you are all having a fantastic, wonderful start to your 4th of July weekend. I made my last video and there are still other things that I wanted to talk about. One of the things that I talked about in my last video actually just mentioned was after dealing with COVID and after going through some of those things associated with that, I had kind of got into this depressed state where I was questioning some things. I was dealing with things that I had not dealt with, and it was a pretty weird time for me. And I kind of thought about, the fact that a lot of people go through these things like this. Around this same time, May of this year, there were several books by pastors that were released. Craig Groeschel had Winning the War with Your Mind. Pastor Chris Hodges had Out of the Cave. Louis Giglio had Don't Let the Enemy Have a Seat at Your Table. And there's more than those that all have come out recently, and they're all dealing with depression and going through these hard times. It's a lot of people have gone through because of COVID, all of these things, so it's been a difficult season for a lot of people. And that this season has not been the only difficult season for a lot of people as well. There's been a lot of difficult times for people all over our whole lives through the history of the world. And so I got to thinking about that and how those books, I've started reading some of them. They helped me a lot. But I wanted to continue to talk about kind of some of these things because I see a lot of people have this question: why do bad things happen to good people? Why do good people have to go through these tough times? And so the first thing that I want to say is there are no good people, not by God's standard anyway. We are all, no matter what we do, we all fall short of the glory of God. We are all sinners, and there's nothing that we can do to be ultimately good. The only thing that we can do is be saved by Jesus. Then we get that basically blood over the door of our lives, like the Egyptians got. Put the blood over the threshold of your door. Over the top part of your door, and you'll be passed over and you won't be killed, right? Jesus' blood on our lives is the only thing that can make us what I would say we could call good. And that's the only thing that will get us to heaven. So having that out of the way, that none of us are ultimately good, even though a lot of us can do good things with our life and strive for goodness, none of us are ultimately good. And again, I said this in the last video, but I want to say it again now. I don't feel in my heart that God makes us go through bad things. Like, I don't think God didn't create COVID. God didn't cause me to be depressed. That was my actions. That was my patterns of thought. That was the things that I did that. That God didn't do that to me. But God can use that to make me better. So, I was thinking about this, and so I wanted to take you guys to David again. David was this person that we would consider, and we've always heard, if you've been in church, you've always heard David was a man after God's own heart. In Psalms 23, he says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table for me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Other than John 3:16, for Christians, I would say this is probably one of the most famous verses that we quote ever. But I want to touch on something that we probably don't think of when we read this verse. We think of, God's protection over us, etc. But I think there's an important part, because David says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." Now, David didn't say, even though Philip comes way, way, way after David, God didn't say, "Hey, how about, God, you take me and teleport me to the other end of this valley so I don't have to walk through it. That'd be great. That'd be wonderful. Let's do that, because I don't want to walk through this valley. Looks bad, looks dark. Don't want to do it." Right? He didn't say that, and he didn't even, ask for that. He just said, "Although I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." I'll walk through the valley, but I'm not going to be afraid. Now, I imagine that a valley, if he's looking at a valley, or he's in the valley, and he says that it is the valley of the shadow of death, probably a pretty scary valley, if I had to guess. If I'm going through a place that is called the valley of the shadow of death, I'm probably going to be scared. I'm just throwing that out there. Now, we all, and again, this is kind of one of those Christian sayings, because we all talk about our valleys and our mountains in our life, and we may even see the stickers on the back of cars, the G and the up, and or G and the greater than, and the up and the down. God's greater than my ups and my downs, or my mountains and my valleys. But we all go through these valleys and these rough patches and these hard times in our life, and some of them are very, 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 very hard. I wouldn't say that my little deal of depression is like other people's battle with depression. I wouldn't say that I had as hard of a time as some other people have, or that times in my life have been harder than any other people's. It's all about perspective, and all about the things that people go through. I can't say that anything I've been through has been any worse or any easier than anything else that anybody else has been through. But I know that the one thing that I said at the beginning, and the thing that we all say at the beginning of any valley that we're going through, or any hard time that we're going through, is, "Hey, Lord, can you get me out of this? Can you pick me up out of here? Let's get me past this so I can go about living my awesome life that you have for me." Now, that would be great. That would be great. But I think that it's one of those things where we can't appreciate the good times unless we've really had the bad times to compare them to. If everything was always good, then that means everything is just average. But I want to point something out about this, and it's repeated over and over and over and over again throughout the Bible, and that is the only way out. The only way out of our hard times, the only way out of the valley that David was in, was through. You had to go through. Starting at the beginning, go through it, you'll come out on the other end. Now, that doesn't mean that going through it is going to be all bad. If we remember that we have a God that is our good shepherd, that has a rod and a staff, the rod to beat away our enemies, and the staff to bring us back into the fold if we kind of get out of the fold. If we remember that and go to him and stay beside him, we're going to be okay. Now, we're not usually going through a literal valley. We're going through a spiritual valley. We're going through a physical valley. We're going through something in our lives that we're just calling a valley, but it's just a tough, hard time. And we don't want to wait through it. I went to the doctor the other day and did some blood work, and there's two things that the nurse called and said, hey, your kidney levels are bad. They weren't super off, but they were a little off. They thought it was a medicine I was on. So they said, here, we're just going to switch this medicine. Maybe that's it. And then we'll do blood work again in a few weeks, and then we'll see if it's better. And I'm sitting here thinking, if my kidney numbers are bad, what if it's not just the medicine? What if it's something worse? But I have to wait for weeks till my next appointment to find that out. You know, it's in a lot of times with doctors and appointments and stuff like that. That's how it goes. But, you know, that ended up working out. No problem. But a lot of times we get news, we find out something bad happens, and it's a while before that conflict in our life is resolved. And, you know, I'm going to go with another quote from C.S. Lewis. I've quoted C.S. Lewis in my last video. C.S. Lewis quotes on my Instagram. C.S. Lewis, again, is one of the most brilliant people in, you know, history that I can think of. There's plenty, but for some reason he just speaks to me. Even his books, Chronicles of Narnia, which are supposed to be children's books, there's just so much wisdom there. So he just speaks to me on a whole different level. But he said, I'm sure God keeps no one waiting unless he sees that it is good for them to wait. So yes, we have to go through the valley. We have to wait for whatever conflict it is to be resolved, but there's got to be something good coming out of that. Now again, I don't think that God puts us through these hard times. I don't think that God makes us go through COVID. I don't think that God takes our family members away from us. I think that all of those things are a product of the fallen world that we live in. But I think that a couple of things can happen with God during those hard times. Number one, Psalms 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. And I think sometimes, and I said this sort of in the last video, I think sometimes that the times that we're listening for God the most, the times that we are talking to God the most, the times that we're yearning to be closer to God so that we can hear what he has to say to us the most, is when we're crushed, when we're broken. And when we go through these hard times, that is what we are. We are broken, we are crushed, and it takes a while for us to get back to a situation that we would consider where we're whole, or we're at least put back together. So I'm going to use a house analogy here. My wife and I were remodeling a house. It's taken me a long time. She wishes that I had it finished already. I'm telling her I'm going to get to it. If you're a man and you've got a project going on, you've used that phrase before. I'm going to get to it. I'm going to get to it. But I'm going to use a house analogy. So a lot of people walk into a house and look at it and say, nah, this is junk. That's gross, that's gross, that's gross, that's gross. This is all awful. The floor's sinking in right here. Pretty sure the ceiling's falling in right there. That looks like there was a leak there. There's probably mold behind that wall, etc., 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 etc. Now, that is us. And thank goodness that God doesn't look at us that way and then just pass us over. God looks at us like a home remodeler would look at us. or look at a house. You know, if you've watched Fixer Upper, Chip and Joanna Gaines, they don't go into a house and say, let's go out. It can smell bad. It can be falling in. It can be covered with mold. It can have all kind of asbestos in it, everything else. And they're saying, no, we can make something out of this. We can make this work. So sometimes you have to go into the house. You have to take everything down to the studs, take everything off the walls, so that you can get to what's behind, what's inside the walls, and figure out what stuff is good that we can keep, what stuff is bad that needs to go. And you know, we did that with our house. We tore some stuff out. You know, hey, this wall can come out. Let's make this open concept. We've got to put some bracing in to make it stronger here. This wiring's good. We can keep it. This plumbing is bad. We have to change it out. And like I said, the same thing goes for us. If we were, well, I'll put it this way. If the house had feelings, if the house felt things, then that whole process for that house would be extremely painful. We're ripping things out. We are replacing things. Some of the things the house may have even liked. The house may have liked that color on those walls. My wife did not. There's a better color for those walls than what that house had before. And maybe we put up some shiplap, etc. But I can guarantee you one thing too. If the house had those feelings and dealt with that, then I guarantee you that after the whole process was over, then the house would be thankful, because the house would be stronger. The house would be able to withstand more. The house is going to last a whole lot longer. The house is going to look nicer. A lot of people are going to have a lot more enjoyment out of that house than they did before. And we're kind of the same way. Sometimes in these valleys, in these struggles, in these places of pain, we have to examine our house, which is our body, and we have to say, what are some things that I need to get rid of? What are some things that I need to change around? For me, going through this stage of depression, I really hate calling it depression, because I don't think that it can compare to depression that other people have had to deal with. But you know, there were times where I would wake up in the middle of the night and my thoughts went to negative, and I couldn't sleep. There was one week where I basically didn't eat because there was so much going on in my mind, and it was just killing me, for lack of a better term. But I took that opportunity to say, okay, where is it that I can make some changes? Because I'm not going to be living this way. I need to make some changes for myself, because I'm the only thing that I can change. You know, during that whole process, I'm looking at all of the situations in my life, you know, negatively. I'm looking at the house and I'm saying, God, I wish this house was finished. It's never going to be finished. This is never going to be worth anything. I'm not even doing a good job building it or fixing it. You know, I'm looking at work and I'm thinking, man, I'm not even making a difference. Kids don't care about English, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I was pretty negative, but I told myself, I'm not going to continue to be this way. I've got a clean house. I've got to look at what's going on in my life, what my patterns are. I've got to figure out how I can be better, because that's the only thing that I can change is myself. So I prayed about it and I said, God, show me the ways that I can be better. Show me the things that I can change. And through that process, I'm getting there. I think we're always a work in progress. I think we, in our walks with God, and I think us in general, we are always, there's always one more project we can do. Just like this house, there's always one more project. You know, I can always think of another thing to add or take out, or another wall to paint a different color, or something like that. And I think we're all always just this work in progress. And going through these hard times can build us up, can draw us closer to God, and prepare us for the next season of life. And so this is what I want to talk about now. Sometimes when we go through something, part of what can come out of that thing that we're going through is that we get stronger. If we wait on the Lord, we can get a little stronger and be prepared for whatever's on the other side of that valley, whatever's on the other side of that painful thing that we're going through. If we look at the Egyptians, Moses freed the Egyptians. They went through the wilderness and they were prepared for the promised land. Joseph, his brothers sold him into slavery. He had to deal with Potiphar's wife. He was thrown in prison and everything else. But on the end of all of that, he was able to save the same brothers that threw him in prison. Through all of that process, he realized that he needed to save his brothers, not punish them. And one of those brothers went on to be like the great times 34 grandfather of Jesus. That line, that lineage, that family went on to eventually be where Jesus was born. And there's a lot more examples biblically that I can give you of this same process. Individual goes through something, comes out on the other end. This section of their life was really tough, but once they got to the other end of it, they were better, and there was a blessing waiting for them. They were better, and there was a blessing. We all go through tough times, but I want you to remember these stories. David went through the valley, came back out on the other side. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went into the furnace, but there was another in the fire with them. They came out, and the person that threw them in that fire was saved. Moses went into the wilderness, but his people got the promised land. Paul was in prison, but he was chained to so many people, and he counted it as joy because he got to minister to all of those people, and all of those people were saved. Now, I got one more verse that I want to read to you, and to provide some context, I want to tell you that what had happened right before this was we're in Kings, and Elisha had prayed. Elisha had sent out somebody to go scout where they were going, and the person came back and said, "There's so many people, what are we going to do?" And instead of just telling him, "Here's what we're going to do," or "Here's why it's going to be okay," Elisha prayed, and he said, "Lord, I pray thee open his eyes so that he may see." And the Lord opened his eyes, and the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain where they were was full of horses and chariots of fire around Elisha. You see this reference in other places. This is the God of angel armies. This is the angel army that's surrounding them. Elijah knows it's there. And now this person that Elijah had sent realizes that it's there. And he knows that everything's going to be okay. And this is referenced other places in the Bible, the angel armies. And Chris Tomlin wrote a song about it. The God of angel armies is always by my side. So, not only is God with us, the angel armies are with us. Jesus is with us. Even though we have to go through these tough times, even though I had to go through, and I'm still kind of dealing with, this depression, this state of tearing things out, rebuilding myself, I know that God's with me, and if I draw close to Him, if we draw close to God in our valleys, then we're going to get through them. Remember that the only way out is through. We can't just pray and end up on the other end. That wouldn't be good for us. There's something good for us if we go through and we get better, we get tougher. But on the other side, we will be better, and there's probably going to be a blessing too. So just remember that. I'm praying for you guys. Message me anywhere if you need anything. I hope that something in here blessed you or helped you out in some way. I love y'all. I'm here for you. God bless you.